Hey, what's going on, guys? I hope you're all having a great day so far, and welcome back to another Should You Buy review. I've been very excited for this one, and today we are going to be talking about Miles Morales Spider-Man. The game released on November 12th on the PS4 and PS5, and today I'm going to break down the game and let you guys know if it's worth that $50 price tag. Insomniac's first Spider-Man game from 2018 followed our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and man, that game was good. This time around we are playing as the new, inexperienced Spider-Man Miles Morales. The difference between Miles and Peter is very noticeable. For starters, Peter is an adult while Miles is still in high school, and there are plenty of examples where we can see Miles displaying some immaturity and he makes a lot of mistakes. Overall, I thought they did a really good job of keeping Miles accurate to his character though. He's very similar to how he was in Spider-Verse. Amazing movie, by the way, and I was very happy to see them portray that youthful, awkward energy Miles has as a character. He has this really cool and emotional internal struggle trying to become confident in his role as Spider-Man and kind of dealing with living in that massive shadow Peter Parker's Spider-Man has cast over New York. Speaking of Peter, I do like how he has served as a mentor and teacher to Miles, and the dynamic between the two characters is really cool to see, and I wish we could have seen a little bit more of it. Now, Peter's reasoning for leaving New York in Miles' hands doesn't make total sense and is pretty irresponsible of Peter, but hey, this is the same guy who did this, so you can't really expect anything less of him. And the game wastes no time throwing you into the action. The game starts with this really awesome and cinematic boss fight with Rhino, and it's a nice and clever way of establishing Miles' moveset and the Venom abilities. And there's a lot of cool moments and set pieces like this. Not to be cliche, but it really does make you feel like you're playing in a live Spider-Man movie with all these awesome looking cinematic boss fights and cutscenes. This game also has a really great cast of side characters. You got Miles' mom, Genki, Finn, even Aaron Davis as the Prowler, and they were all so great because each character has a deep emotional connection to Miles, and you can see how what's going on during the story affects each of their relationships with Miles. Now, as I'm sure you likely heard, this game has a very short story. It only took me about 6 to 8 hours to roll credits, which obviously is a big disappointment to some people. To be honest, it wasn't that big of a deal to me since there was a lot less filler and the story was more fast-paced and action-packed, like a movie. But what does bother me is the price. I think $50 is a bit too pricey for the amount of content the game has to offer. I think $40 or even $30 would be more reasonable, so that may be something you want to consider before buying the game. It really depends if you're willing to be patient and wait for a sale, or if you just want to get into the game as soon as possible. Gameplay wise, this game is still just as amazing and in some areas even more so than the first game. Web swinging of course is incredible and feels even smoother than the first game. Web swinging has still got to be my favorite part about the game. There's something just so satisfying about swinging around New York City, and it just never gets old. It pretty much is the exact same as the first game, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Same thing can pretty much be said for the combat. There aren't a lot of new features. One difference from the first Spider-Man game is obviously Miles' Venom abilities, which look sick in the game and are a lot of fun to use. They aren't incredibly in-depth or groundbreaking, but it's a nice addition to some already phenomenal combat. And once again, the core of the combat is just so smooth and fun that Insomniac really didn't need to add much to it. Another thing that is different though are the animations. It's very clear when playing the game that Miles was intentionally given these more messy and unconfident animations when in combat and web swinging, which is great because it displays how unsure and inexperienced he is as Spider-Man. He's not this well-rounded and experienced fighter like Peter, and I love how that came across in the animations. That doesn't mean the animations don't look as cool though. They still look very good and extremely cinematic, especially the takedown animations. Now, stealth is also pretty much the same from the first game, but there was definitely a lot more focus on it in this game. Almost every mission had a stealth sequence, which was really fun, especially for a stealth enthusiast as myself. There were some cool new fun features like shock mines and the invisibility you could use in stealth, which was great to see. Now, the stealth is very simple, but it's still a lot of fun, and I wasn't expecting some crazy in-depth stealth system from a Spider-Man game. My only real complaint with the stealth is that it feels a little too easy. It holds your hand a lot by telling you when it's safe to perform a takedown takedown of an enemy, and especially with invisibility added, it becomes even easier. It would have been cool to have more enemies that can counter the stealth, like how there are in the Batman Arkham games, where you would have some of those enemies that can jam your ability to use detective mode. Something like that would have been really nice. Now, the mission structure has slightly improved as well. It's still a lot of the same thing for each main mission, you know, stealth, combat, some kind of wall crawling or puzzle, and then it's capped off with a boss fight. And there's nothing really wrong with that. The game is so short that the mission design never feels boring or dragged out. The side quests are handled pretty well. They now run through the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app, and the side missions actually have some backstory and story threads connected to them, so it's not as tedious as the first game. The other side activities are still pretty tedious and grindy, however. There's a lot of collectibles, training activities, and random events. I tried to complete these side activities, but it feels like such a large grind for such little reward. I'll probably go back at some other day and complete them all, but I know exactly what to expect from it. The customization in this game is solid. There's a lot of fun suits to unlock and collect like the first game, and all had some cool unique designs and styles that fit Miles' version of Spider-Man, including the really sick looking classic red and black suit, which I personally like even more than Peter's version. There's also a bunch of little modifications you can make to the suit and unlock things like auto marking or increased venom charge. You also have your unique and wide variety of gadgets along with the skill tree. The skill tree is pretty small and they don't have humongous impacts in the gameplay, but I do appreciate that you start this game with a lot of the movesets and abilities you had to unlock in the last game, so it didn't feel like you were starting over. The open world from Miles Morales is the same world from Spider-Man PS4. This may be disappointing to some people, but there really isn't much they could do when Spider-Man 99% of the time takes place in New York. Maybe they could have done something like Far From Home, but it doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of the story, and I'm gonna cut Insomniac some slack. They aren't some greedy, large, rich company that can just grind out completely new worlds every year. Plus, they added snow to the maps to make it feel almost like brand new and get us in the Christmas spirit. Not to mention, New York City is so big, chances are you aren't sick of its open world just yet. The world is very immersive. Swinging around, you can hear and see people walking down the sidewalks and cars honking as you swing right over them. Even the people reacting to and interacting with you when you go up to them. The day and night cycle is also great, and the dynamic weather with the snow was quite magical. And as I'm sure you can tell from the video, the game looks pretty stunning. I didn't notice a huge difference in graphics from Spider-Man PS4, but the faces looked a lot more detailed, and little things like lighting and shadows have seen some improvement. Now, I did play this game on PS4 because I refused to buy a PS5 from a scalper, but it still ran pretty well. I was able to play on 4K 30 FPS and it was alright. There were some moments with some big FPS drops, especially with snow on the screen and in the large boss fights, especially that last one. It felt like I was playing on a slideshow. I was disappointed there was no performance mode for PS4 Pro. I know there's one for PS5 where you can run the game at 1080p and 60 FPS, but even a 1080p 40 to 50 FPS option for PS4 Pro would have been nice because I always prefer frames and smoothness opposed to a really high resolution, and for some reason there is still no 1440 support for PlayStation, but that's a topic for another video. Like I mentioned earlier though, the cutscenes and set pieces look fantastic in this game. Everything looked super cinematic and was chock full of that good old Spider-Man flavor. Also, the load times in this game are very impressive. Even on PS4 without that fancy new SSD stuff, the loading times were noticeably much quicker than Spider-Man PS4. And you also don't have to sit through any long loading screens whenever you leave the inside of a building during the missions, making the game feel a lot more fluid and seamless. Transitions from gameplay to cutscene was also very impressive and once again enhances that feeling of playing through a live Spider-Man movie. Miles Morales Spider-Man features a great and interesting protagonist in Miles Morales. The web swinging and combat is back and better than ever. The stealth is basic yet fun, and the game is very cinematic and has some very impressive load times. However, the game does have a lot of tedious side activities, and it is only 8 to 12 hours long, making that $50 price tag seem a bit excessive. Therefore, leading me to giving Miles Morales Spider-Man an overall rating of a 9 out of 10. Now, don't let that rating fool you, as As fun and enjoyable as the game is, I do believe the $50 price tag is quite expensive for the amount of content you are getting. I would recommend waiting for some type of sale and getting the game at a cheaper price so you get more value out of what you're playing. The game is very good, and although it doesn't have a lot of new features, it is still a little jam-packed game that will have you addicted to Spider-Man once again. Not to mention the Spider-Man Remastered on PS5, which will make you even more obsessed with the series. But that just about wraps up my opinion on Miles Morales Spider-Man, and now I want to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of Miles as a character? How do you like the new Venom abilities? Do you believe the game is overpriced? Please feel free to express your opinion down in the comments, and I would love to discuss it with you. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, you can always thank me by leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. We just hit 7K, so thank you all so much for that, and I want to go for that big 10K. If we can make that happen before the end of the year, that would be a dream come true. If you want to talk about video games or find people to play with or just discuss my videos with me, please feel free to join my Discord server. Link is in the description. Other than that, thank you for watching and have a great Thanksgiving, Assassins.